All right, we're looking good so far. All right, I see Samantha is with us. Good morning, Sam.
Morning.
And Nat is with us. Good morning. Mason, good morning. Brooke, gotcha. Louie's logging in. Catherine Mary. All right. Did everyone turn in their assignments for this past week? Everyone's doing good so far. Any questions for me?
Wait, what were the assignments again? It was just like the footprint calculator thing,
Yes.
and that was it?
And the course syllabus quiz, I think everyone turned it in. I'm looking real quick. Okay, so we have, yeah, looks like that was it. Ecologic, there it is. Course discussion quiz and the ecological footprint.
Well, the scientific method was due today.
So sorry?
The scientific method was due today, the experiment.
It was, yes.
And the quiz for the first week was due today, I believe.
Yes, in quiz chapter 1. Yes, so Monday email I sent out, scientific method, and I have to look and see because I had a couple outstanding this morning, and then sign up for Brooker Creek, and then the chapter 1 quiz was due in 2 minutes. And then we have on Thursday, the quiz on Brooker Creek will be due on what Dr. Stevens tells us on bugs and butterflies. And then we will start chapter 2. We'll go over the carbon dioxide calculator, but we're going to start on chapter 2. Okay, did you all like the scientific method with the bubble gum?
It was so much gum.
So much gum. Can you blow a bubble, or did you have to have someone else do it?
I could blow the bubble, yeah, but I had to, it was like just chewing so many pieces. I was like sick of gum by the end of it.
Yeah, I imagine, right.
Wait, what happens if we totally forgot to do that assignment?
Send it to me today, Mason.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I've been working like 37 hours a week. So yeah, but I promise I'll get it to you today.
Okay, no problem. I understand. And Sophia, I see you're here. Sophia, remember to send me in your lab waiver, okay?
Of course. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm just looking real quick. Okay, Tina, I see you're on. You're in the class, and Dominic, I've gotcha. Krista, gotcha. Tran and Logan are here. Mariana, gotcha. Jacob, gotcha. Myrna, Natalie. All right, Brooke is logging in. I'm just going to go through the list again here, make sure I've got everyone. Yesterday, Zoom died at this time. That was interesting for my biology class that no one could log in. I guess Zoom went down for everyone. So we're back up and running. Yay. Okay, looks like I got everyone. It's in the room. Okay. Anyone have any questions for me? Good morning, James. How are you? Good to see you.
Thanks. Good morning. I'm so glad that you asked us to come out this morning, or at least stay at home this morning, as the case is. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay,
And
great.
thank you so much for the presentation this morning. So everyone, you'll want to take notes, and your quiz will be due on Thursday. Okay, on the information, as well as some of this material will be on your on exam number 1 as well. Okay, well, thank you so much, and thanks for having us today.
Sure.
We're excited, bugs and butterflies.
Right. Well, I have to say good morning to everyone, and thanks to Professor Stickrath for asking us to be a part of your curriculum with bugs and butterflies in your backyard. I have been doing quite a lot of these Zoom lectures, but this will be the first time that I have the entire audience, as it were, visible to me, and with the ability to raise your hand, chat. If you want to break in with a question, go ahead and do that. I'll do my best to respond. We're hoping, like Kelly was saying, Zoom went down yesterday, so we're hoping it'll stick around for us this morning. Going ahead and getting started. Bugs and butterflies in your backyard. My name is James Stevenson, and I am with the University of Florida, the Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences. We are an extension of the University of Florida right here in Pinellas County. Every county in the state has got an extension of the University of Florida, an outpost of the university. And what we do, what we're responsible for, is we provide research-based information from UF, from the Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences, for free to the citizens in the county. And this system was set up back at the turn of the last century in order to get research-based information from UF to the agricultural community. A lot of farmers back in the day, they would use traditional farming methods that might work just fine, but the research done at the university would allow those farmers, the agricultural community, to maybe increase their yields, improve their livelihoods, streamline their practices. And so that benefits everyone, doesn't it? So if the farmers are more productive and have more healthier families, the research that the Institute does extends not just for agricultural practices, but right into the household, providing information on preserving food just for the household, also managing household wealth. So although it began in the agricultural community, it really has a great width and breadth that reaches out into all aspects of all of our lives. And now Pinellas County is hardly an agricultural county, are we? We're not ag. We're not cattle ranches and orange groves. We used to be, but not anymore. And so the Extension Service here in Pinellas County, we provide information on how to be good environmental stewards, kind of writ large. So we give a lot of advice on how to tend to your yard without using harmful pesticides or herbicides or releasing exotic species, because if you think about it, misusing pesticide or herbicide, any sort of toxins in your yard is going to end up eventually in the watershed and eventually at our coasts. And as a tourist-based economy here in our county, we can't afford to mess up our coasts or the rest of the environment, as it were. So you can see how the information that we provide for free to the citizens in the county, kind of help build on and support all three legs of a sustainable society. And what does in the world does that have to do with bugs and butterflies? Well, we'll get to that, I hope. I'm actually a Pinellas County employee. So we're a partnership. We're often referred to as the co-op, the cooperative between University of Florida and the local government. So the local government pays me to give information to the citizens from the University of Florida. And so we prevent expensive problems down the road. And when it comes to things like yard advice, if we give people advice on how to prevent the release of an exotic species, then the county doesn't have to pay to clean up the mess that's created by that invasive species. So you see, it's a cooperative, and when we work hand in hand. So that's what I do. I have an office here at Brooker Creek Preserve, and if any of you went to an elementary school in Pinellas County north of Ulmerton Road, in the 4th grade, you might have come to Brooker Creek Preserve on a field trip. We have a robust field trip run by the Pinellas County Schools and the Southwest Florida Water Management District. Now, Brooker Creek Preserve is 9,000 acres of undeveloped Pinellas County, which is unheard of. We are the most developed county in the state. We are the smallest and the most densely populated. So basically, we're an urban county. Our preserve sits on these 9,000 acres in the north of the county. And being a preserve, it's a place for the plants, animals, water, all the natural systems to exist without human interference. So it's a place where people can visit, but more importantly than that, it's a place where our water supply and the natural world's water supply is protected and filtered in perpetuity. So a really, really special place. That's where we are. That's who I am. That's what I do. I think that pretty much covers the bases. We'll go ahead and get started with bugs and butterflies. And we'll take a look at bugs. But I'm going to say up front, and this is probably worth writing down, we're going to start calling this group of animals bugs. From today on, we're all entomologists, we're all scientists, we're all studying biological sciences. We're going to refer to this group of animals by their proper name, which is insect. We're going to refer to this group of animals as insects. And there's a reason for that. We'll get to that towards the middle of today's presentation, why we're going to leave the word bug over there. I'm not going to get rid of it completely. But as far as this group of organisms, we'll refer to them as the insects. And they have this name. It's a very descriptive name. It's given to this group of organisms because they are made of sections. Insect, section, incision, all these words have the same root. These animals are made of sections. And raise your hand if you can name the 3 main sections of an insect's body. What are the 3 main incisions? Raise your hand. What am I seeing? I see nothing. I'm looking at chat. Can anyone name the 3 main sections of an insect's body? I got a couple of Kelly. Okay, Chad, thanks. Anyone else? Okay, we got some. Okay, good. So you can name the 3 main body sections of an insect. They are incised. They are in these 3 sections: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen, of course. Now the head, this is the area of sensory perception and feeding. So we have on the head section the eyes, the antenna, which are very sensitive. I used to call them feelers when I was a little kid because they can feel just about everything. Light, vibration, moisture, temperature, all these things. And the feeding apparatus is also located on the head section. The thorax is the locomotion. It's the middle section of the insect's body, pretty much given over to locomotion. It's where how many legs in an insect? 6. Where the 6 legs are located, and the 2 pair of wings, so 4 wings in total. And this is funny, the front wings are called the forewings, F-O-R-E. So the forewings and the hind wings, making 2 pairs, so 4 wings, and the musculature that's going to drive these animals into the air. The abdomen is the hind section of the insect, and that's where the guts and the reproductive and the respiratory and the excretory, all the rest of the necessary components are located in the abdomen. But if you look even closer, each one of these sections, each one of these main 3 sections of an insect's body are further incised. They have more sections than that. And if you look at the abdomen, even the abdomen is cut into these individual sections. And the thorax, each one of the legs is located on a separate section. So insects are very finely divided, and all stuck together. All insects are stuck together in this basic way. So that's what makes an insect, because it's made of sections. And the insects are an ancient group of animals. And they were scurrying around in the underbrush, cohabitating with all the other early land animals, but they were the first animals to take flight. These were the first animals in the air, and that ability to break the bounds of gravity caused an extreme explosion in diversity. The only thing that increased the diversity of insects more than their ability to get up and get off the ground was the advent of the flowering plants. And the flowering plants owe their diversity to the diversity of insects, and the insects owe their diversity, a great part of their diversity, into the diversity of the flowering plants. So hand in hand, plants and insects. And here we have an example of an insect with its wings. In this instance, this is a beetle, a type of insect called a beetle. And beetles are a huge group of insects. And you can see the 4 wings, 1, 2, 3, 4. And in this case, the 4 wings, the ones in the front, are modified. They're not flying wings, they're protective wing coverings. So the beetles have this pair of hind wings, and you can see a little hinge, and these wings fold up, and they fold very neatly into this suitcase. The 4 wings being strengthened, and the hind wings that power the flight can fold up into this protective covering. The beetles have the ability to crawl around in the underbrush. They have these reinforced forewings that protect the filmy, the diaphanous hind wings and allow them to keep them from being damaged by being concealed when they're not in flight in this reinforced forewing. But I did want to show you the 1, 2, 3, 4 wings of an insect. So that's their mobility. Insects' vision is not 100% understood. We do know that insects have very complex vision. Insects have compound eyes. Their eyes are made, just like their bodies, of a whole bunch of little tiny parts, smaller parts. And this is a good close-up of an insect called a praying mantis. And this is the very large compound eye of a praying mantis. Now, this isn't the only way that insects perceive their environment. We talked about the antennas briefly, but as far as visual cues, insects have vision. And it is not, as I mentioned, it's not very clearly understood exactly what insects see. If you're familiar with any of the old corny science fiction movies of the 1950s and 60s, when the giant insect comes to terrorize the people, and you got to see the insect's eye view of the world, and it was kind of like a kaleidoscope. Probably not a kaleidoscopic view of the world. There's probably more of a singular image that is produced by the various parts of the compound eye. But it is known that at least in one group of insects, the insects can transform visual cues into a three-dimensional image. So some insects can see in 3 dimensions. This was proven by showing a 3D movie to a bug, to an insect that was wearing 3D glasses. Actually, the scientists took beeswax, which is very sticky and non-toxic, and glued a pair of miniature 3D glasses to the forehead of a praying mantis and showed it a 3D movie of its prey. And the mantis reacted. It tried to strike at that, what it perceived to be a 3D image. Removing the 3D glasses and showing the film again, the praying mantis didn't respond. So evidence, not proof, but evidence that at least the mantids can see in 3 dimensions. So there's some fun experiments to do. Keep a bunch of praying mantis as pets and show them movies. Research. Feeding. Insects have, because of their diversity and because of their ability to get from A to B using their wings, they can eat just about anything. And different groups of insects have become specific feeders on particular substances. We saw the beetles before with their protected wings. As a whole, beetles are very good at chewing. And the mouth parts of the beetle are modified into these kind of masticating, serrated mandibles that move from side to side. And beetles can chew through things like wood. They can chew through other plant parts. They can chew through fallen fruit. They can chew through dead animals. They can chew through live animals and so on. So the mouth parts of a beetle are modified most often into these chewing mouth parts. Now, the same mouth parts have been modified many different times to facilitate different feeding mechanisms. And the same mouth parts that in the beetle are modified into those giant serrated masticating machines of chewing, in the butterflies and moths, those same mouth parts are modified into a long, thin, hollow, flexible, very membranous tube. So vastly different jobs made from these same mouth parts. In the development of an insect embryo, the mouth parts are identical in these 2 insects. They just modify through the development of that individual. And in the case of the butterflies and the moths, become this thing called a proboscis, which siphons nectar up out of tubular flowers. The same mouth parts during the development of the embryo of a group of insects called the flies are modified into sponges. So not blades, not straws, but sponges in the case of certain flies. And they use that sponge to mop up nutrients and salts and liquids, often from dung, the feces of herbivores, scat, the feces of omnivores, carrion, dead meat. So the flies can use this sponge to mop up all that would otherwise go to waste, all that good nutrient that's found in the excrement or the carcass of other animals on Earth. And of course, we all know that some insects, quote unquote, bite. And the biting insects, they have the same mouth parts as the chewing, the siphoning, the sponging, but in the case of the biting insects, they have those modified into what's called obviously a beak, which can pierce the surface of whatever living thing this particular insect is going to feed upon. It might pierce plant tissue and feed off plant nutrients, but it can also very well pierce animal tissues and feed off animal tissues, blood, flesh, etc. So all these different mechanisms, they're all derived from the same mouth parts, just put together differently for the different purposes. Now, insects go through a process called metamorphosis, and you might remember this. I think I remember learning the word metamorphosis when I was in, elementary school. Metamorphosis literally means change in form. Metamorphosis, a change in form. And a complete metamorphosis is when the larva, whatever hatches out of the egg of the insects, looks wildly 100% different from the adult. And we have probably heard the bloody butterfly life cycle 100 billion times ever since elementary school. It's been done to death. We all get it. I know you all do. But here it is. We have the egg, hatches into a caterpillar. The caterpillar feeds, goes into its chrysalis, undergoes metamorphosis, a complete metamorphosis, and emerges as an adult looking completely different from the larval stage. An incomplete metamorphosis is when egg hatches and the resulting larva looks pretty much like the adult, usually without, or most often, almost always, without those wings. The wings are only apparent in the adult morph, or in the adult stage. So an incomplete metamorphosis here is represented by a dragonfly. Dragonflies have aquatic larvae, which are referred to as nymphs. So the dragonfly spends its youth, as it were, underwater, feeding, hunting, consuming underwater meat. They're carnivorous, and then they emerge from the water, shed their exuvia, their former exoskeleton, and emerge as the adult dragonfly with the wings. So that's an incomplete metamorphosis. It's not quite as severe, as extreme, I should say. So two basic kinds of metamorphosis that insects go through. So that's kind of all the insects together. So let's look at some particular groups of insects. So what is that insect? And we'll start with a group called the dragonflies. The odonates, odonata, which means toothy. The dragonflies are an ancient lineage of insects. These were among the fossil record has quite a lot of dragonflies. Back in the time, well before, way back when, there was a lot more oxygen in the atmosphere. And that allowed for the insects, and the dragonflies in particular, to become much, much larger. We'll talk about how insects breathe in just a second, but the amount of that available environmental oxygen allowed for a very large body in some of the early dragonflies. And dragonflies are also carnivorous, just like their larvae. They are sight hunters, so they have these enormous compound eyes, and they can see practically 360 because they're hunting, and they're hunting in the air, and they capture their prey in the air. Their wings remain outstretched on either side. So the forewings and the hind wings of the dragonflies. Dragonflies can fly forward, backward, from side to side. They can loop to loop. They can stop in midair. They can hover. Very, very acrobatic, very, very agile, because they are catching flying prey on the wing. We mentioned that their larvae are aquatic, and here we have a dragonfly nymph. This is actually in an aquarium. This is an aquatic plant that the dragonfly nymph is standing on, and it is feeding on meat. It is a carnivorous, and the dragonfly nymph inspired a horror film monster. If you're familiar with the movie Aliens, I've never seen it, but I know about it because it was around when I was a kid. Aliens. You know what's special about that alien? What it could do with its mouth? It had a mouth that it could shoot outside of its other mouth and grab. This is the creature, the real life animal that inspired that monster. The dragonfly nymph has mouth parts modified in the nymph stage that actually shoot forward and grab prey from midstream and then pull that prey back to the mouth where it chews and chews and chews and grows and grows and grows. You can see where the wings are going to develop just here, but for now, the dragonfly nymph is feeding, living in fresh water on whatever it can catch in the water. In order for the dragonfly nymphs to be healthy, the water has to be clean. So dragonflies search out clean water to lay their eggs. Compromised water systems are going to compromise dragonfly populations. And so the presence and absence of certain species or quantities of dragonflies can actually indicate water quality in a particular area. You can see dragonflies can take down pretty large prey, and they don't hesitate to be carnivorous. Nope, that's not the word. What is it called when you eat your own thing? Cannibalistic. Dragonflies will even cannibalize their own kind. So voracious hunters, adults don't live very long, but they live long enough to need to feed. Most insects, the adult phase is primarily for reproduction, and the majority of the life of an insect is spent as a larva. Another group of insects include the crickets and the grasshoppers. And crickets and grasshoppers are really more alike than different, but they're separated within their little family. Their family is called the orthopterans, which translates to straight wings. The crickets, generally speaking, are cryptically colored. That means they have coloration that allows them to hide. They're generally nocturnal. And so that cryptic coloration is most often darker shades that allow them to hide during the day and even hide during the night. Crickets are one of the singing insects. That means they can make a noise, and quite a loud noise. And although there has been traditionally the thought that crickets rub their legs together to make that chirping sound, it's actually a mechanism on their wings. You probably haven't ever done this, but you can probably imagine doing this. If you have a hair comb and you have a popsicle stick, you can take the popsicle stick and run it down the comb and make a noise, make a little chirping noise. That's basically what a cricket is doing. It's got a comb and a popsicle stick on opposite wings, and it basically drags that popsicle stick down the comb to make that chirping noise. And the chirping noise is an advertisement, territory, marital status, just an advertisement of presence. So the crickets use sound. So obviously insects can also hear. Now the ears aren't always or ever located on the head. Ears are often located on the abdomen section where sound is perceived as a vibration that's picked up on the abdomen. So speaking of crickets, crickets are very easy to raise. They're easy to rear. They're often used in the pet industry as live food for insectivorous or carnivorous pets because they're easy to grow. They're easy to raise. They're not very demanding. They're easy to feed. You can create huge colonies of these things for sale. And so not even recently, in the history of humanity, the vast abundance of insects on Earth and their rapid reproductive rate and their huge numbers have led humans in certain parts of the world to view insects as a very viable food source, and rightly so, for all those reasons I just mentioned. They can occur in large numbers. as far as harvest goes, you can harvest a huge biomass of insects and not affect the population status at all, easily raised. So insects can be reared and raised as a source of protein. Perfectly normal and accepted in many parts of the world. It's just the major consumers of the world's resources, which would be us here in the West, need to get over that and start looking towards alternative food sources. And as far as protein goes, why not consider insects? Today, you can buy a flour, not a smelly flour, but a flour that you cook with that is made from crickets. You wouldn't know anything. There's even a recipe for chocolate chirp cookies made from cricket flour. So just a little something to add in about the importance and the potential importance of insects as biomass on our planet. Related to the crickets, of course, are the grasshoppers. And the difference, again, between the crickets and the grasshoppers, almost semantic, but really the grasshoppers are generally more active during the day. They're generally brighter colored. They generally have shorter antenna. You can see in this instance, I need to get y'all's face out of the way so I can see. Yeah, the antenna of grasshoppers are shorter. But overall, you kind of see the resemblance, the powerful hind legs that they use for bounding around. Now, this slide, I wanted to show you a little bit more about this group of insects writ large, insects as a whole. And we can see the three main body segments, which are, you can say out loud because I can't hear you, which is this section, the head, and the mobility section is called the thorax. I heard that, well done. And then the third section is the abdomen. And then we mentioned that each of these sections is again sectioned, and you can see the sections of the abdomen here. And if you look very closely where I'm circling the cursor, you can see little holes in the sides of each section of the abdomen of this grasshopper. This grasshopper is illustrating how insects as a whole breathe. They don't breathe in and out of their mouth like we do. They don't have lungs like we do. They don't inhale and exhale, but they have an open respiratory system. So they have their body, their innards are basically open to the outdoors. And these holes on the sides of the abdomen, called spiracles, S-P-I-R-A-C-L-E-S, that word comes up quite a lot in biology, spiracles. It's a fancy word for hole, basically, usually used for respiration. Sphere and respiration, the same root. So the spiracles are holes that are open to the outside world, and insects can pump their abdomen using muscles that act like a bellows. And if you don't know what a bellows is, B-E-L-L-O-W-S, might be worth looking up. Expanding the abdomen cavity creates negative pressure that pulls atmospheric oxygen and everything else into the abdomen, and then contracting the abdomen muscles forces the air back out. So the air is just kind of circulating throughout the insect body. The air can pass through into the insect blood, just like air gets into our blood at the lungs. The air gets into the insect version of blood through this passive just exposure to the gases by the action of that pumping abdomen. So that's how insects breathe. And humans have taken advantage of that method of respiration in the case of pest insects. If you have an insect that's eating your crops, and on a very, very small scale, if you're just trying to grow one tomato plant on your balcony and something's eating it, and you want to kill that thing, and you don't want to use poison, perhaps because you're going to be eating that, you're going to want to use something non-toxic. And so the fact that the insects breathe through these holes, humans have taken advantage of. And humans can clog the spiracles to suffocate the pest. And using something like a soap, a liquid soap, or detergent, or a non-toxic oil suspended in water, applied directly to the body of an insect, is going to clog those spiracles and cause that insect to suffocate. So it's a non-toxic chemical control. Obviously, oils are chemicals, and soaps are basically compounds of various chemicals. So that's how humans have kind of figured out how to suffocate pest insects. Speaking of pests, the grasshoppers can change their feeding habits. Most grasshoppers are, they're not colonial. They're solitary is the word that I was looking for. Many insects are colonial. Many insects exist in very large groups. Grasshoppers tend to be singular, just lone. They live by themselves until it's time to reproduce. They just feed. But certain environmental triggers cause certain species of grasshoppers to change their feeding habits from being solitary and having a solitary lifestyle and just living on their one plant and eating their plant until it's time to get married and then die, changing their feeding habits and coming together as huge, huge swarms. And in the case of grasshoppers, that changes their name from whatever species of grasshopper they represent when they're living alone. They change into a swarm. And a swarm of grasshoppers are then referred to by another name, locust. And you might have heard of a plague of locust. That is when grasshoppers, this group of insects, several species of grasshoppers, change their feeding habits. They become known then as locust. And there is actually a plague of locust currently underway in Africa. And when this happens, these huge swarms, up to 1 billion or more individuals, just lay waste to all vegetation in their path. And you can see how that would have an extremely negative impact on local agriculture. Trying to understand what causes this event to happen, what environmental trigger, what chemical trigger. Is it the plants themselves that send out some sort of population control signal? Perhaps the plants themselves are saying, we're getting a little bit too successful here. We need to rein this in a little bit, send a signal out to cause the insects to change their behavior. This isn't really quite understood yet. So figuring that out could have a huge economic impact on the world's food supply. A very charismatic group of insects are the mantids. They're referred to as the Mantodia, which translate into prophet. And if you're familiar with the word prophet, it means a person of religion. And it's because of the way that these insects present their forearms. Just like insects have a forewing, F-O-R-E, wing, they have forearms, F-O-R-E, arms. And the forearms of the mantids are covered in teeth, but they're held in front of them as if the animal is in prayer. Well, they're not in prayer. They're in waiting. They're predators that are waiting to use these teeth to snatch their prey up out of the air or whatever they're living on. Remember, this is the group that has been shown, not necessarily proven, but Experiments have indicated that this group can see in 3 dimensions because they will strike at a 3-dimensional image of a prey species. They're very successful predators. Here we have a mantid, a bark mantid or a grizzled mantid with his arms folded in that prayer posture in front, very brightly colored, bright patterning of black and white and pale green. The insides of the forearms here are bright red. Kind of a striking, insect, you know, with all these bright colors. You know, how are you going to hide? Well, this native mantid, this is native right here in Pinellas County. If you're lucky, you'll see them. And I say if you're lucky, you'll see them because here's a picture of a bark mantis being pretty well camouflaged so that it can use that cryptic coloration to hide in plain sight. It doesn't have to conceal itself. It can sit on the surface of whatever it's going to live on. In this case, it's a tree bark, and be completely camouflaged against the lichen or the organisms that are growing on this tree branch. And if you can't see it by now, I'll point it out. Here's the 2 eyes. There's the thorax. There's the wings. I hope y'all can see it now. There's a little leg, little drumstick sticking out right there. Little antenna sticking up here. So this mantid is completely camouflaged so that it can sit and wait for some unsuspecting insect to walk by, and then it lashes those arms way out in front of it, grabs the prey, and pulls it in to its mouth. It's pretty good stuff, the mantids. They make wonderful pets, by the way. Very charismatic. The females. The males of the mantids, they are very, very much like their close relatives, the cockroaches, which I'm not particularly fond of. I love insects. I study insects. It's part of my job. I still, to this day, if I open a drawer and there's a cockroach in there, I'm going to scream. I'm going to leave the place. I'm going to leave the building until my coworker, Julia, goes and dispatches that horrible thing, for which I'm eternally grateful. Anyway, another group of insects, the cockroaches. Blatodia, a nice disgusting family name for a nice disgusting family. It's what the Greeks referred to these things as blatodes. This is a photograph of our native palmetto bug. We have some native roaches, and this is one of them. And what you'll notice about the palmetto bug, aside from the fact that they're very big and very juicy, they don't have wings. You can see the pads here on the thorax where the wings would be, but our native palmetto bug is flightless. They just want to stay outside. They're not good in the air conditioning. They're not good in low humidity. They don't want to come inside. They love to live in the undergrowth, underneath leaves, hidden, out of sight, out of mind, eating decaying plants and whatever else, just really minding their own business. Palmetto bugs, no big deal. Certainly not economically important. Ecologically important, yes. I mean, they're certainly a major part of the food chain and as part of the decomposing part of the food chain, but they're not economically important. Economically important members of this family include these terrors. These are the species that have adapted to life with people. And the American roach, which is an African species, sorry, I'm getting a little quippy. The Australian roach, another African species, and the German roach, which is an Asian species. These are the ones that have moved into our habitation and have taken up life as filth-feeding insects and can carry disease and can cause someone like me to pay a stranger on the street to come and take care of this. So obviously economically important, just for cleanliness, for health. You know that restaurants can get shut down if these things are discovered. Why do they have these names if they're not really from these countries? Legend has it that it's because wherever they showed up, the people just basically called them by the name of the country that they didn't like. So I think the French have a slang word for Spaniards it's the same word for flea. So it just gives you an idea of, that national pride. So anyway, somebody in some country saw a bunch of these roaches and they don't like Americans. So they said, oh, look, it's Americans, or oh, look, it's Australians. Anyway, so those are the roaches. You'll notice that these species do have wings. They are able to take flight. And as much as I hate to sit on this slide for much longer, I do want to point out a couple of things that are common across the insect spectrum. Look at the legs, hairy legs. Those hairs are also very important sensory organs. So we have the antenna that can pick up all kind of environmental cues. They also have these hairs, extensions of the exoskeleton that can also pick up vibrations, moisture levels, stimulation, all these sorts of things. So hairs and antenna, both very important parts of the insect nervous system. Let's get out of the roaches. And I need to have some coffee. All right. Now, this is why we do not refer to insects as bugs. Because as of today, all 26 of you are entomologists, and you will not make that mistake anymore, because there is a group of insects that are referred to as the true bugs. Bed bugs, stink bugs, assassin bugs. What else do we have? Leaf-footed bugs. These are a nice little compact family of insects that get to be called the true bugs. You don't need to show off with this information, just be armed with this information. That's a good lesson to carry through life. Nobody likes to show off. Anyway, the true bugs have a diamond-shaped body. You can see that. Their name Hemiptera translates as half-wing. Like the beetles, they also have their forewing, the pair of wings that are in the front. They're modified. They're not quite as useful for flight. So half-wing refers to the fact that this group of insects really only uses half of its wings to fly, the pair of hind wings. This is a leaf-footed bug, and you can see its drumstick, its hind leg here. The tibia, which you might recognize that word, the tibia is actually flattened out. That's what gives it its name, the leaf-footed bug. It's kind of it helps in camouflage. As you can tell, perhaps from the photograph, these insects tend to hang around on and around plants for various reasons. The leaf-footed bug is kind of an impressive size. This one's about 1 inch long. And not surprisingly, I'm on an insect Facebook group, insects of Florida, insects of Pinellas County, what have you. And almost once a week, somebody joins this group because they have a picture of this insect and they're completely freaked out. They don't know what it is, and it's big and it's scary. It's a leaf-footed bug. It's harmless unless you're a plant. It has these very exaggerated hind legs that apparently are quite frightening to some. Oftentimes, if you do see this insect, you're only going to see one hind leg. The bugs, despite the fact that this group can produce quite a lot of noxious chemicals that they can keep in their body. Remember I mentioned that the stink bug is in this group? Well, the stink bug is not the only stinky bug within this group. Many members can produce toxic, noxious chemicals that prevent them from being eaten. Another defense mechanism in the case of the leaf-footed bug, they can just throw their leg at whatever is attacking them and get away. So apparently something came to eat this bug, and it took its hind leg and just chucked it towards the potential predator and ran off with its one remaining good leg, leaving the potential predator confused as to why it has this thing in its hand. Anyway, so this is the leaf-footed bug. Another of the bugs is the wheel bug, W-H-E-E-L, or it has a much sexier common name, the assassin bug. And the bugs as a group have, remember mouth parts and how they're all modified into all the different things, the chewing and the siphoning and the sponging and the piercing. In this case, the bugs have their mouth parts modified into a piercing dagger. And you can see those mouth parts, which are modified into blades or straws in other groups of insects, are here modified into a dagger that's so substantial and so big, the animal has to kind of hold it under its chin out of the way until it's time to deploy. And when I say deploy, the bugs hang around on plants and flowers in particular, camouflaged, oftentimes lying in wait, using their antenna, very well developed and jointed antenna to detect the presence of prey, also their well developed eyes for the presence of prey, and when their prey species gets close enough, it can deploy that dagger, pierce through the very tough exoskeleton of their prey species, in this case a beetle, and then it's got the dagger. Inside the dagger, the rest of the mouth parts are modified to draw all that insect version of blood, the insect version of guts, the insect version of gonads, all that good wet nutrient up into the digestive system of the predator, really, and leaving behind just an empty husk. So those are the bugs. I do not have a slide of a bed bug. That could be a whole different lecture. It is a different lecture. The Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences does a lot on bed bug research. Of course, bed bugs are economically important. They cost millions of dollars a year to deal with, very difficult to get rid of. They are a nest predator. They are a nest parasite. Forgive me, the bed bugs are. They can live for years and years and years and years and years without feeding until a food source returns to wherever they are. Anyway, so the bed bugs are within this group of insects, and that's why we don't call them bugs. Moving on. I'm actually gonna check, what have we got in chat? Let me just check chat. All right, we gotta wrap it up, don't we? All right, is it true if the insects disappear, the ecosystem would collapse? 100% true, yes. Insects are almost as big a part of the food chain as plants. Way up there, major bottom of the food chain. Gonna wrap it up with the cicadas. Oftentimes the cicadas are referred to as the locust, but this is a separate group of insects. The cicadas are loud. They're the ones that make all that racket. Cicadas undergo a complete metamorphosis, and you may have seen the exoskeleton of the larva of the cicada clinging to a screen wall or something like that. I'm gonna leave you with one of my favorite insects. Anybody know what this is? When you're a kid, you ever see this happening?
Ant pile?
Ants.
It's like the opposite of an ant pile. This is actually concave, whereas an ant hill is convex. This is concave. This is an ant lion. This is a trap that is set to catch ants. At the bottom of this pit sits the larva of an insect. If an ant were to crawl along and fall into this trap, it would trigger the creature at the bottom of that trap. There's something there. And at the bottom of this trap sits that, the ant lion. And it's covered in these sensory hairs. It can sense that there's something in that pit using these large dagger-like mandibles pulls its prey underground and consumes it. But life at the bottom of a pit is very lonely. It's a terrible way to meet a mate and reproduce. So that creature eventually turns into this and flies away and mates and makes more ant lions. Now I'm just going to escape from this and going to, okay, gonna sweep through. We're gonna get to a really special group of organisms. Slideshow, current slide. And now we need to share screen. Okay, everybody got this butterfly? You got the butterfly? What's this butterfly? Everybody knows this butterfly.
Monarch?
Monarch.
Right. This is the Florida. Where'd it go? This is the Florida Viceroy. It's not a monarch. It wants you to think it's a monarch. The Florida Viceroy feeds on willow, and willow has a lot of toxins in. And so this butterfly also gets a lot of toxins in. But it looks very much, well, its larva looks like bird poo. So it has all these mechanisms to keep from being consumed. But look at the the Viceroy. Its hind wing has this line through it. That's how humans can tell the difference, but animals aren't very good at telling the difference. Here we have the true monarch missing that line through the back. The queen butterfly also missing that line, but you can see how they're all similar to one another. The monarch and the queen feed on milkweed, and they also have toxins in. So these species, the queen, the monarch, and the viceroy, mimic each other, so that if a bird were to take a bite out of a viceroy and get that bad willow poison, it's very likely that that bird is not going to attack a monarch or a queen, because they're going to confuse, just like we do, the monarch and the queen for the viceroy. So that's a mimicry that protects different unrelated individuals. Just the same as if a bird were to take a bite out of a monarch and have that horrible milkweed poison taste, they would leave a viceroy or a queen alone. So that's how that mimicry works. See if we have anything here. Thanks very much for joining today. I'm going to have to let you go. It's the end of your course. I hope that maybe sometime you'll come up and see us up here at Brooker Creek. It's probably time for y'all to get on to another class. Thanks for joining, and I appreciated being with you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
James, can you show us a picture real quick of the Florida state butterfly?
Of course. Let's back up a few slides. It would be the zebra longwing. And the zebra longwing, the butterflies, remember, they have those mouth parts modified into that siphoning tube. Here we have it sticking that tube down into a tubular flower to draw out the nectar. The zebra longwing butterfly.
We still see the viceroy.
Oh, you do? Let me not understand why that is. Oh, resume share. I must have hit something. You got it? Okay. Zebra longwing. It's called zebra because it has this bold black and white pattern. Zebra longwings, as I was mentioning, that tubular siphoning mouth part, drawing nectar out from the inside of this tubular flower. Butterflies are terrible pollinators. Absolutely dreadful pollinators. They don't hardly get any pollen on them at all. They don't transfer pollen from one flower to another. They love to eat and steal the nectar, however. the zebra longwing, this is one of our longest lived butterflies because they actually eat pollen. And eating pollen isn't going to do that plant any good, but it does the butterfly lots of good because pollen is very rich in protein, and it feeds the butterfly and allows this butterfly to live for months, almost an entire summer, whereas most other butterflies only live for days or a few weeks. So anything else I can touch on, Miss Kelly?
I think that's it. Thank you so much. Very informative. Great
My
presentation.
pleasure, of course.
Thank you.
Thanks. Y'all have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
All right.
Bye, everyone. I'll see you all Thursday.
Do you hold office hours?
Yes, Chad, just let me go back to the other Zoom, the regular class Zoom.